Welcome back to the Sabo-Ross experiment. I'm Greg Sabo.
And I'm Ross. Today we're melting down the headlines, literally. We're talking about a wild story. The U.S. is repurposing uranium from old warheads to feed next-gen nuclear reactors. It sounds like sci-fi, but it's real.
Yeah, it's one of those only in 2024 stories where geopolitics, energy policy, and a little bit of mad scientist level metallurgy all collide. We're going to unpack what's happening, why it matters, and what it could mean for energy, national security, and of course, for the weird little industries that pop up around it.
Short version, Congress and the White House moved to stop buying enriched uranium from Russia, and that has a ripple effect. The U.S. needs fuel for advanced reactors, especially SMRs, small modular reactors. And one of the sources being talked about is diluted weapons-grade uranium from old warheads.
To be concrete, the law that bans certain imports of Russian-enriched uranium was signed into law in May 2024, and rules around when the ban begins and how waivers are granted were later clarified by the Energy Department. The administration framed this as a move to shore up U.S. domestic fuel production and reduce reliance on Russia.
And Reuters also covered the timeline and the fact that waivers are possible if a plant has supply concerns. This isn't a total immediate cutoff for every single delivery, but it certainly tightened the market.
So companies and researchers started looking at other sources of HALEU, that's high assay low enriched uranium, the kind of fuel many SMRs need. And yes, that includes material derived from dismantled warhead uranium. The whole thing even earned the nickname couch cushion exercise from a U.S. Office of Nuclear Energy official, which is such a weirdly domestic image for nuclear policy.
Quick tech for folks at home. HALEU is uranium enriched to higher levels than the fuel in many current reactors, but still low enough to be non-weapons grade. Advanced small reactors want HALEU because it's denser energy in a smaller package, helpful for compact modular designs.
The catch is the global enrichment market has been dominated by a few big players, Russia being one of them. So when politics cuts off a major supplier, startups and labs scramble to secure fuel. One creative solution, take down-blended weapons-grade material or other U.S. stockpiles and convert it into HALEU suitable for reactors. That conversion and fabrication is non-trivial. It's expensive, technical, and tightly regulated.
There are startups racing hard here. Names like TerraPower and Oklo come up a lot. TerraPower, backed by Bill Gates, and Oklo, backers include tech investors, are among companies trying to demonstrate SMRs and need reliable HALEU supplies to run prototypes and first commercial units.
We're getting to the point where we need to see more urgency from the government, Jeff Navin from TerraPower told reporters. The companies want clearer pathways to the fuel they need.
The government has responded with funding. The Energy Department stated billions in support to revive domestic enrichment and conversion capacity. That's meant to seed a U.S. supply chain that doesn't depend on foreign enrichment.
Politically, it's a balancing act. You're trying to cut off a strategic revenue stream to Russia while assuring that U.S. reactors, many of which currently rely on Russian origin LEU, don't lose fuel. The law included waiver authority and recognition of those supply realities.
This part sounds poetic. Disarmament turned into kilowatt hours. But there are real complexities.
First, there's safety and regulation. Handling weapons grade material and converting it into reactor fuel isn't simply melt and pour. It involves intense safeguards, accounting for non-proliferation, environmental reviews, and secure transport and processing facilities. Then there's public perception. Neighbors hearing we're using bomb uranium will understandably have questions. The NRC and DOE regimes are strict for a reason.
Second, think about the timeline. Building domestic enrichment and conversion capacity doesn't happen overnight. That's why we're seeing creative stopgaps, but they're transitional solutions. The idea of using warhead material is technically plausible, but not a wholesale replacement for a full commercial supply chain.
Third, there's the broader strategic picture. If you can turn weapons material into reactor fuel, that's a net positive for non-proliferation in one sense. You're reducing stockpiles, but you also create new industries and supply chains with their own vulnerabilities. It's complicated and, frankly, kind of beautiful in the messy American way.
Practically, if SMRs really scale, nuclear could provide dispatchable, low emission power that complements wind and solar. That's the climate argument. But it all rests on fuel availability, economics, and public acceptance.
For listeners who care about the nitty gritty, a lot of this comes down to cost. Enrichment and fuel fabrication are expensive. The government's billions in funding are meant to de risk that. And the market pressures, higher demand for HALEU from advanced reactors, could push investment into domestic plants. That's the bet policymakers are making.
If they're melting warheads to make fuel, does that mean fewer nukes? Good question. In this context, the warhead material being discussed comes from retired stockpiles or material processed under strict DoD/DOE protocols. It's not like active weapons are being casually remixed. Dismantling and conversion are deliberate, audited programs overseen by regulators. So yes, it can reduce weapons stockpiles, but it's a controlled and legal process.
Should I be worried about safety near a HLEU fab? Local safety is governed by the NRC and DOE and state authorities. These facilities have high safety and security standards. If a plant is proposed near you, it'll go through permitting, environmental review, and public comment processes. Stay engaged and ask the tough questions.
Takeaway: geopolitics pushed a policy change, banning some Russian-enriched uranium, and industry had to get creative. That creativity includes repurposing material from disassembled weapons and building domestic enrichment. It's a high-stakes, high-tech pivot with long timelines and big implications.
We'll keep an eye on the companies moving fast, TerraPower, Oklo, and others, and on Department of Energy moves on HLU funding and waivers. This story sits at the intersection of energy, defense, and climate, and it's far from over.
That's it for this episode. If you like us turning the headlines into weird little experiments, hit subscribe, drop a review, become a patron, and tell us what odd news you want us to chew on next.
And as always, stay curious, stay skeptical, and don't let the government put a crucible in your living room. Bye.